What do you do when you've just found out that your mother's been diagnosed with motor neuron disease? And all of a sudden, there's a time limit on dealing with all of those things that families choose to ignore. Well, maybe our family. And okay, maybe more likely me. My mother and I had a contentious relationship, marred with grudges and missed opportunities, mostly centred around our collective and individual ancestry. We were both born out of wedlock, but for my mother, the 1940s came with a complete severance of identity. As a cross-cultural adoptee, she was born with no history, no sense of self-identity, and no peace born of a strong foundation of knowing who you are and where you come from. Being the brown face in a white family can mess with that identity, and though our nan loved her, and us, we were different. We were outsiders, Māori, adopted. At its height in New Zealand, over 80,000 tamariki Māori children were placed in closed and sealed adoptions. Many were Māori, like my mother, but born to Pākehā European mothers. At the time, the social norms and stigmas dictated that they believed they were better placed in Pākehā European families. But these decisions come with consequences, and my mother always seemed to be and to act less. Her decisions were often limited, and her behaviours, well, the one that produced me, was merely a repeat of the past. My identity loss became her fault. In the rage of an adolescent mind, it's easy to pass blame. It was her fault I was as disconnected as she was. It was her fault that I was brought up by my nan, just like she was. And it turns out I can hold a grudge. Where my mother suffered from psychological mental health challenges due to her identity loss, I used anger to protect myself. But now here we are, and the clock is ticking. She'd always wanted to know who she was and where she came from. But adoption records are shrouded in secrecy, and there are laws to make sure that you can't get access to them. That was until the 1985 Adult Adoption Act was passed. A cause to celebrate, right? Well, not so much for us. Mum now had her original birth certificate, and with that, the name of her mother. But unfortunately, she had already passed. And wouldn't you know it, no father listed. She looked for other family in the hope that they might be able to help her find out who she was and where she came from. But unfortunately, the only person she made contact with was none too happy to see this brown skeleton fall out of the closet. Now, I need to be clear here. I don't hold any judgment. Time and place is everything. And social and societal norms dictate our responses. Whether they're right or wrong is subjective to all parties. In other words, it is what it is. But what it meant was there were now no more answers. No more records to look at, no more people to ask. And with that, a sense of lessness, incompleteness settled in, of being less, of being not wanted. The time is ticking. And none of us know how to answer that question, nor Hekwe. Where are you from? Her arms work less and her speech is becoming more slurred. There is one last choice though, DNA testing. The marketing material is seducing. Just spit in this little tube or take a cheek swab and send it off, and all the answers will come back to your questions. DNA is an amazing tool, and it can give you all the answers, right? Well, it turns out not always. DNA is an amazing tool. And the technology has improved a lot over time. The tools that are provided help in the search, but it still didn't help us answer that question. No hea koe, where are you from? Cross-cultural adoption comes with a greater disconnect because you're now disconnected from both cultures. You're disconnected from Pākehā European culture because of the colour of your skin. The categorisations, stereotypes and the labels that go with it. You're disconnected from Māori culture because you lack connection. And not just to whānau, to family, but to te reo, the language, to whakapapa, the genealogy, and to whenua, the land too. You are less in all worlds, and you navigate the landscape to minimise your risk of exposure. But time continues to tick, and we still have no answers. The DNA testing is only as good as the results that you get back. Unfortunately, our results were too far to be definitive. If you managed to have matches that were a sibling, a parent, or a grandparent, and they were prepared to take an additional test, those answers are definitive. But that wasn't how it was going to be for us. So we needed to now take the closest matches and apply traditional genealogical processes of checking documentation, records, existing family trees and existing whakapapa to figure out who mum's birth father and birth mother were. Now, just to explain this a little bit more, I'm going to introduce a new concept or a new word. If you have Māori or Indigenous whakapapa, it's complicated. And one of those complications is endogamy, which means, in very simplistic terms, intermarriage due to small ancestral bases, sometimes known as founder communities. So what does that mean? Well, you get 50% of your DNA from each parent. But let's say your parents were second cousins. They already have the same ancestral DNA in each parent, meaning that there's a higher likelihood of a higher level of that DNA showing up in the child, which translates to a closer estimated relationship. Over generations, that can get even more confusing. So the results that you get back sometimes give you lots of matches, but a lot of them are far more distantly related than the estimated relationships would suggest. DNA doesn't lie, so it's a great starting point, be it a costly and time-consuming one. But time is ticking, and we are running out of time. The DNA technology has improved with time, and the data has become more accurate. But there are risks to taking DNA tests that we often don't think about. Like, how much of my privacy am I giving away when I send this off to this multinational company? Are there any laws in New Zealand that will protect me once I send my sample away? Will I ever read the pages of terms and conditions or acceptance agreements before I dive in? The answer is usually no. And those companies count on that. Then there's the information you get back. Once you get past the, wow, I'm part Viking, or look, I'm 22% Irish, you might find out something that you don't want to know. Like your parent isn't your biological parent. And that can be a fast track back to our starting point. Who are you and where do you come from? DNA is also collective. So your test affects others. And if you have Māori or Indigenous whakapapa, it can also affect data sovereignty. So there are risks with taking DNA tests. But there's also the possibility of finding out amazing answers. Unfortunately, time ran out for my mother. And she passed before we were able to give her the answer to the one question she'd always wanted. Now, you might think that this is a sad story. And it kind of is, to not be able to give her that information before she passed. But it's also her triumph. Her triumph for humanising identity loss. Her triumph for kickstarting a passion in me to do something about it. This journey has opened my eyes, and the biggest shock that I have found is the amount of people in the same path, in the same position. A hangover from colonisation's assimilation and integration policies. Adoption, cross-cultural adoption. Some not even consensual, but taken without permission from state care. That's become my driver, the reason I did my master's research, to look at the policies and issues that got us here in the first place. And what protections there might be around the one tool that we have that offers hope when there's no other options available. Even when it challenges the very cultures we belong to. So this has become a bigger journey than our whānau. And the mother that I struggled to relate to in life has become the catalyst for the research that I do now, and continues to be as I look towards a PhD. For our whānau, our family, our tamariki, our children, our mokopuna, our grandchildren, we can now answer the question, no hia koe, where are you from? The DNA technology allowed us to combine with genealogical processes and find out who mum's birth father and birth mother were. And with that, and strengthening family ties, it has now closed a chapter in our history that will no longer plague the rest of our whānau. So when we're asked that question, no hia koe, where are you from? We now know our pepeha, our cultural connections. Ko te upuku o tahumātia te maunga, ko aukana te awa. Ko urio te waka, ko wairiwa te marae. Ko nai tāhu rua, ko nā te Pākehā, European, uku iwi. We got the answers to the questions that we wanted. And though they didn't come with the speed that we wanted them to, they did come. And because of that, my research may help other people connect the missing threads to their missing ancestral whakapapa. Before I finish today, I'd just like to leave a couple of thoughts. Firstly, if you have challenges or issues with someone in your whānau, don't put it off until the time is right, because it may never come. And for those of you that are looking for the missing threads to your own stories, there are options. But be warned, it usually isn't a quick fix. There are risks that you need to consider. But it is a valuable tool when there are no other options available.